Chapter 3: How to Stick to Your Budget Without Feeling Miserable. Let's dive into this important topic. Most people equate budgeting with deprivation. That only makes them rebel against the plan. This chapter focuses on what actually helps you keep a budget without feeling miserable. Flexible rules that protect your goals and let you enjoy life. The 90% rule is the centerpiece here. A beginner-friendly idea that gives you margin for mistakes while keeping progress steady. You'll learn how the 90% rule works in practice, including simple math to apply it and examples of how it keeps small slip-ups from turning into budget failure. We'll pair that with a mindset shift. Instead of strict limits that feel like punishment, you'll use boundaries. Clear, kind guidelines that make decisions easier. Boundaries are about protecting your priorities, not policing every purchase. The chapter also covers realistic strategies for dealing with temptation and social pressure. What to do when your friends suggest an expensive night out. How to plan treats so they don't derail your month. Those are practical conversations you'll have here, with scripts and rules you can use right away. Lastly, we'll cover recovery. How to respond without shame when you break your own rules. You'll get a short process to assess the damage, make a quick correction, and reframe the experience so it becomes useful instead of discouraging. Budgeting should be a practice you learn from, not a test you fail. This chapter gives you the tools to keep going with confidence. 3.1 The 90% Rule. The 90% rule is a simple safety net. Plan to use about 90% of your available money for spending and regular bills, and leave roughly 10% alone as a buffer or short-term savings. This small margin stops minor slip-ups from turning into a crisis and makes the whole budget feel less strict. Below are clear ways to use the rule and an easy math example so you can apply it today. What the rule actually means. The 90% rule isn't about hiding money or being stingy. It's a practical habit that creates predictable breathing room in your month. When you plan to spend about 90% of your take-home pay, you build a small, automatic cushion that soaks up minor surprises, an unexpected bill, a pricier grocery trip, or a payment that comes due earlier than expected. This 10% functions as a short-term shock absorber, not a replacement for an emergency fund. It reduces pressure on decisions and makes the rest of your budget less fragile. Because the buffer exists up front, you won't need a new rule every time something small goes wrong. Over time, the cushion can grow. If you consistently don't use the full 10% some months, you can redirect that money into longer-term savings. The immediate benefit is both psychological and practical. Less stress, fewer late fees, and a realistic margin that makes budgeting feel manageable instead of punitive. Simple math you can use right now. Applying the 90% rule is quick math you can do anytime. Start with your average take-home pay for a typical month. Multiply that number by 0.9 to find the amount you'll plan for regular spending and bills. For example, $3,000, 0.9 is $2,700. The remaining $300 becomes your buffer. If your income swings, use a conservative baseline. Pick the lowest reasonable month or average several months, and recalculate when income changes so your 90% target stays relevant. That prevents basing decisions on an inflated expectation of cash flow. Use the 90% figure as the combined cap across all 4 categories. Track actual spending against it during your weekly reset. If you consistently exceed the cap, make quick adjustments. Shift discretionary dollars, negotiate bills, or temporarily reduce non-essentials. How it fits the 4-category budget. Think of the 90% target as the total pie you'll divide among essentials, financial goals, lifestyle, and fun. Cover essentials first: housing, utilities, food, and transportation, because those are non-negotiable. Aim to keep essentials comfortably within the 90% so other priorities still get funded. Next, allocate to financial goals: debt payments, retirement, and short-term savings. Even small, consistent contributions matter. The 90% rule protects these by limiting total spending so goals aren't crowded out. Then assign money to lifestyle, subscriptions, dining out, personal care, and reserve a slice for fun. Small pleasures that keep your budget livable. If essentials threaten to consume more than 90%, the math gives you a clear signal. Reduce costs, negotiate bills, or make temporary lifestyle cuts. Use the weekly reset to track balances and shift between lifestyle and fun as needed. The cap makes prioritization simple and visible, where the 10% goes. Deciding in advance what the 10% will do removes guesswork when life throws something at you. One straightforward option is to keep the 10% as a true buffer in your checking account, untouched unless a real surprise appears. That minimizes overdrafts and stress without extra accounts. Another approach is to use the 10% to fund short-term sinking funds, quarterly insurance, vehicle maintenance, or holiday spending. Label small buckets so the money feels purposeful rather than free cash. You can also designate part of the 10% for planned treats, an inexpensive night out, or a hobby purchase, so enjoyment doesn't sabotage your month. Rotate the 10% purpose based on priorities. If a big irregular expense is coming, funnel the buffer into that sinking fund. In stronger months, move unused 10% into a longer-term emergency fund. Set a simple rule for tapping the 10%, for example, only for expenses over $50 or true emergencies, and commit to replenishing it by the next month. 3.2. Using boundaries instead of restrictions. Boundaries make decisions easy without feeling like punishment. Instead of forbidding things, set clear limits that protect what's important. Boundaries are kind and practical rules you follow to protect your goals while still living a life you enjoy. Here are ways to create useful boundaries and handle situations where your plans meet real life. Boundaries versus restrictions. Restrictions say never. Boundaries say this much and this often. For example, instead of banning dining out, set a boundary: 2 restaurant meals per week or $60 per month. That keeps you connected to social life while preventing small choices from snowballing. Boundaries are easier to keep because they feel fair and predictable. They turn abstract rules into measurable limits you can plan around. When you know the rules ahead of time, you make calmer decisions and use less willpower. Think of boundaries as guidelines that protect priorities rather than punish impulses. They still require discipline, but the focus shifts to consistency and kindness toward yourself. That reduces shame and makes it more likely you'll stick with your budget for the long term. If your income fluctuates, set percentage-based boundaries instead of fixed dollar amounts so they flex with your pay and stay realistic. Practical boundary examples: simple, specific rules make decisions painless. A weekly entertainment cap, say $25 per week, stops small outings from adding up and lets you plan ahead. A personal spending allowance gives guilt-free money for hobbies, coffee, or treats without touching other categories. Make rules measurable and time-bound. I'll spend no more than $40 on clothes this month beats don't buy clothes. Use calendar triggers. Review big purchases 48 hours before you commit, or check the budget when something exceeds your personal allowance. Combine boundaries with small tech tools. Track a single envelope on your phone or set a dedicated debit card for personal spending. The point isn't micromanagement, it's removing guesswork so willpower isn't needed for every choice. Revisit these boundaries monthly and tweak amounts to match life changes. Start conservative, then loosen a rule if it consistently goes unused. Boundaries should adapt, not punish. Scripting. Social pressure. Having a short, friendly response removes awkwardness and keeps your boundary intact. Use phrases that offer an alternative. "I'd love that, but I'm keeping my month under my budget. Shall we do X instead?" Or, "I can't do that this week, but I'm free for a cheaper option." These lines are quick, honest, and steer plans to something affordable. Keep scripts ready for different situations. For spontaneous nights out, suggest a home gathering. For weekend trips, propose postponing or choosing a less expensive activity. Practice tone. Keep it upbeat and matter-of-fact so it doesn't sound defensive. You don't owe long explanations. A brief statement about sticking to a plan is enough. If friends push, repeat your boundary calmly or offer a lower-cost compromise. Most people respect clear limits when delivered kindly. Over time, these scripts make social budgeting feel normal and reduce guilt. Rituals that support boundaries. Rituals turn boundaries from rules into routines. Schedule a monthly fun top-up so you always have money earmarked for treats. An automatic transfer to a buffer or personal spending account removes the temptation to spend from your main balance. Decide on shopping-free days or weekends to break automatic browsing habits. When you pair a ritual with a trigger, like payday or the first of the month, the action becomes automatic and requires no daily willpower. Use small, repeatable steps before risky moments. Check your weekly budget before going out, set a spending limit on your phone, or pre-plan the night with a low-cost option. Share rituals with a friend or partner for accountability and make them enjoyable instead of punitive. Over time, these tiny habits reduce decision fatigue and keep boundaries sustainable. The goal is a system that supports your choices, not a set of demands you resent. 3. What to do when you break your own rules. Everyone slips up. The real skill is what you do afterward. A quick, shame-free recovery process keeps one mistake from becoming a pattern. This section gives a short, practical sequence. Assess what happened, make a small correction, and use the moment to improve your plan. No guilt, just useful steps. Immediate triage. Assess the damage, start with a short, calm check. When you overspend, get clear details. The exact amount, the category it affected, and whether it was a one-time treat, an impulse buy, or something that might recur. Write those facts down. Don't rely on memory. Note the date, the vendor, and what led to the purchase. For example, late-night scrolling, peer pressure, or a planned celebration. That level of detail prevents fuzzy thinking and stops panic from driving decisions. Next, classify the overspend as either recoverable within the month, a small amount you can shift, or structural, a recurring issue that needs a rule change. This distinction determines whether you need a quick fix or a longer-term adjustment. Finish by setting one simple next step, a minor correction to cover the gap, or a rule to avoid the trigger. Keeping this triage short and factual makes recovery possible without emotional overwhelm. Quick corrective actions. Choose one small, practical correction. Don't try to rewrite the whole month. Pick a single action you can actually follow for the next week or two. Trim discretionary meals, pause a subscription, or use your buffer if you have one. If you have a 10% buffer, moving money from that pot is often cleaner than cutting essentials. If not, reduce non-essential spending for 7 days. Make coffee at home, skip takeout, or temporarily postpone a non-urgent purchase. Avoid dramatic, punitive moves like canceling all those backfire. Instead, aim for a short, measurable step that closes the gap and protects your momentum. Track the result and note whether the correction was enough. Small corrections are easier to keep and less likely to trigger resentment or abandonment. Use the change as a temporary bridge, not a new rule. They restore balance while keeping the budget realistic and sustainable. Reframe the slip-up as data when a slip-up happens, drop the self-criticism, and treat the event as information. Ask 3 quick questions. What was the trigger? How much did it cost? And did it fit in my priorities? Record the answers. Maybe the trigger was stress, a convenience moment, or social pressure. Knowing the cause turns a vague regret into a specific pattern you can fix. Then pick one clear rule to prevent the same mistake, like no spending after 9 p.m., limit nights out to 2 per month, or pre-authorize purchases over $50. Keep rules short and test them for a month. Finally, reframe the outcome. A single overspend is a learning opportunity that improves your budget's design. That mindset keeps motivation high and makes small adjustments feel intentional instead of punitive. Log these episodes and review after 30 days. Patterns become obvious fast. Each piece of data helps you adjust caps, move money between categories, or set a small buffer so future slips don't matter as much. Recovery habits to prevent repeat slips. Pick one recovery habit to focus on. Less is more. Good options include a weekly check-in, keeping a small emergency buffer, or creating a pre-approved treat plan so indulgences are scheduled rather than spontaneous. Set a specific trigger for the habit. After any overspend, delay the next non-essential purchase for 72 hours or transfer a fixed amount to savings as a corrective step. The consequence should teach without shaming. Automate wherever possible. A small automatic transfer into your buffer each paycheck reduces the mental load and prevents future slip stress. If you prefer social support, tell a friend the rule so it becomes easier to stick to. Finally, return to your plan quickly. Make the correction, note what you learned, and resume the routine. Consistency, steady returns to the budget, is far more powerful than chasing perfection. After 30 days, review whether the habit reduced slips, and either keep it, tweak it, or try a new one.